Daith da, Ewi Nakan. Welcome to podcast number 33. We've had another varied week again since I spoke to you last, and started on Saturday, I think was the one that springs to mind. I was quite relaxed. We had a funeral Saturday at Penmount, and we was there way before time at work, getting everything prepared. And I was on my motorbike, and there was about 14 or 15 other motorbikes that were gonna escort the hearse to Penmount. And all was well. Neil, Arves and Mooner, they went on Ed to sort everything out, get everything ready, etc. And we had a phone call back to say they was at a standstill on the main A30. So Days was driving the hearse, so I said, I think we'll start a bit earlier than we was intending to, so at least we'll be ahead of time. So that was fine. So we told all the bikers, so off we headed, and we just got down to Fradden, and we had another phone call. Days had the call on her phone, so she called me over to say that the A30 was actually blocked. I think a lorry had overturned. So it was a quick thinking. Luckily, we were just in the right place. I thought, right, what we can do is take the old road down through Tresillian to get to Trua that way. And obviously, being the bank holiday weekend, the road was busy, but we got down to Penmount, well, spot on time, really. So that was good. But it's like with funerals, you plan everything, to the finest detail. And then it just takes something like a road accident, or a roadworks or something or other. And you have to adapt quickly and sort out which way you're going to get round it. But that was something that we thought was going to be fairly straightforward. We had to alter plans a little bit, but all went well in the end. So then on Sunday, we had the boys in the morning, which was good. And in the afternoon, we headed down to Falmouth because Mabon's football team was playing in the County Cup semi-final, playing Charleston on neutral ground. And quite tense early on because Charleston went 1-0 up, and it took us a while to get in our stride. But we then equalised, and Mabon's usually on the wing, but then she was switched in the centre for a little bit, and she managed to get a couple of goals, which turned things around a bit. It was still a little bit tight here and there, but they actually won 7-3 in the end, so that was a good afternoon. And then the Monday was Bank Holiday Monday, the 1st of May, and there's only one place to be on that day, and that's down Padstow for the Obios celebrations. And this is one of the oldest surviving festivals of this type throughout the whole of the UK. For those of you that don't know, there's two horses that go round the town on that day on separate routes. You got the old horse and you got the blue ribbon horse or the peace horse. And then in the evening, they do end up meeting at the maypole. You can really sense the anticipation growing, really after Christmas and New Year, building right up towards May, and those last few days, all the town folk, they decorate the maypole and all the streets, the flags, the bunting, and there's a lovely close community atmosphere down there. I do like to go down every year, and I tell you what, when you're approaching the town and you hear the drums and the accordions, there's nothing quite like it, really. And I think one of the reasons I love going down is because you mixing with people when we've kind of been looking after them when they've been going through sad times, and it's nice to see them at happy times. But I think that a lovely thing as well with the Padstonians is that they never forget those that have gone before, and they will always honour them. You make little floral tributes, go to the cemetery, etc. I went down on my push bike again this time, and I always end up staying a lot longer than I thought I would, because you just see so many people, because they all come back, all the families come back from all over the world, and I see old schoolmates that had perhaps moved away, and then they all come back for these few days around May Day. So it was good. It was brilliant, and I think it was one of the best May Days in a long time. And speaking to them all down there, and they all said the same. What a fantastic day it was. The weather was good. All was good. I did manage to have a quick yarn with Tim Tutton, one of my old mates, and he was the master of ceremonies for the peace offs this year. So I had a quick yarn with him, but all was well. Like I said, I cycled down again this year, and I did a bit of a longer route, and 'tis the first time, apart from when we went to Scotland for those few days, first time I've really ridden my bike this year, seeing I've been doing all the running. And I tell you what, by the time I got home, my backside was, it resembled a baboon's. 'Twas brave and sore, really. And also, I tell you what, I'm sure they've made that hill going out of Little Petherick a lot steeper than it was last year. Well, that's the way it felt anyway. But that was a good day. And then Tuesday 'twas back to work, and we had a service that day in Lanidroch church there by the house. And I tell you what, the grounds, they was looking immaculate, fantastic. All the flowers have started to come out. So that was me Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we headed to Plint. So for those of you that don't know, I would say Plint, it must be about 4 miles away from Lou. And we've conducted a few funerals out around that way in the past. We've still got friends out there. As Beth, she was brought up in Lanreth, which is just, I think, about 3 miles away from Plint. So it is, we kind of know the area. And of course, a lot of you will most probably know that Plint, the parish, was the birthplace for Bishop Trelawny. Or to give him his full title, the Right Reverend Sir Jonathan Trelawny. And back our way, in Weybridge, we do have a little bit of confusion over the spelling, and I do say to my staff, if they spell his name wrong, because quite often we have Trelawny sung at funerals, I say if you spell his name wrong, 'tis a sackable offence, because his name is spelt without the E before the Y. And of course, I think where the confusion comes in is that we got Trelawny Garden Centre here at Slates Bridge, and that's spelled EY. But Bishop Trelawny is spelt without the E. So to give you a bit of background for those of you that don't know, really why Bishop Trelawny was so important in Cornish history. And in fact, he was one of 7 bishops that was imprisoned in the Tower of London by James II, I think it was 1688. And I think this was all down to James II. He kind of changed a few policies, which was appointing Catholics to high office, etc. And over a couple of years, he brought out a couple of declarations, which he said had to be read out in every church. And these 7 bishops, they protested about this, and they set up a petition against the reading. So James, he reacted by locking them all up in the Tower of London. So news of this did get back to Cornwall, and there was quite a bit of anger, really, and they thought they would try and raise a kind of an army of men to set Trelawny free, but they were struggling a bit. They reckon they could have most probably only raised about 20,000 because they'd given so much to the Royalists' cause in the Civil War, and they were, just so depleted. I mean, the Cornish, they'd overcome the English at Stratton, and then they marched on and they captured Taunton, Bridgewater and Bath, and they was also involved in taking of Bristol. But they'd lost so many men, especially amongst their leaders and that, and then eventually they did return to Cornwall, but they still managed to overcome places like Weymouth, Portland, Bideford, Barnstaple, Exeter and Dartmouth. So basically the Cornish had single-handedly taken over a lot of the rest of the southwest counties. So on the 30th of June 1688, these bishops, they went in front of the bench and they were charged with libel. But to Cheers in Westminster Hall and all the way back, right the way back to Cornwall, they were all acquitted. And of course, this is something that in Cornwall will never be forgotten now, as 'twas made into a song, the Song of the Western Men, otherwise known as Trelawny, which the lyrics was written by Robert Stephen Alker. So Alker was actually born in 1803, and then he was ordained as a vicar in 1831, and then he became the vicar of Morwenstow, which is, I think, the most northerly parish here in Cornwall, in 1834. When he arrived there, I think there hadn't been a vicar in the parish for over 100 years, and they reckon that there was smugglers and wreckers everywhere, so it was a bit roughy ways, I think, at the time. He was a very compassionate man, actually, because I did read once that he would actually give proper burials to shipwrecked men that had been washed up on the shores of the parish. And whereas before he arrived, the bodies were either just left in the sea or just buried on the beaches there. A lot of his parishioners know him as Parson Alker, and he was a bit of an eccentric, really. They reckon that he wore very bright clothes all the time. In fact, I think the only clothing he wore that was black were his socks. And also he built a small hut out of driftwood, which became known as Alker's Hut. And that was up on the cliffs overlooking the Atlantic. And he spent many hours up there writing poems and letters and that is still there today. I think 'tis the smallest property that the National Trust looks after, but you can actually still see that there today. There are other stories about what he got up to. I think they was written in a biography just after he died, and well, they don't know if it was true or no, but they reckon at one stage he went around dressed up as a mermaid, and also he excommunicated his cat for catching mice on Sundays. Now, whether that's true or no, I don't know, but it is a good story. So I had to stop myself for a minute there to think, how the hang did I get onto this? But of course, it was back to Plint. Yep, so that's where we were anyway this week on Wednesday. But sorry about that. I went off totally rambling there, but hope it wasn't too boring. But yeah, there we are. And then today I've seen Kevin Connell. I was talking to Kevin, and it reminded me of a story about his uncle Dennis. And I don't know if a lot of you might remember Dennis Connell here in Wadebridge, and he was good friends with Father in the St. John Ambulance and that. And I was saying to Kevin that I can remember Dennis was one of the few people that I've known that have actually been in the back of our hearse twice. And sadly, the second time it was for his funeral, but he had been in the back of our hearse lying down once before, and that time he'd actually climbed out. So what happened was, it was a funeral we had. It was Rock St. Mimver way, I can remember, and I hadn't been on long with Father. And back then, I expect you might remember when I was talking about our old hearses in the past, the first one we had was actually a converted estate car. So whereas the hearses we have now, the coffin is really on show and it looks good, it was set down a little bit, so you couldn't actually see the whole of the coffin as such. And we had this funeral, I think it might have been somebody from St. John, I'm not too sure, and it was a Saturday funeral, and we were out Rock St. Mimver, wherever it was, and I remember we was just about to go, and Dennis said to Father, well, I better see if I can get a lift home back to Wadebridge now. And Father said, well, if you don't mind, he said, we're going back there now, you can lie down in the back. So Dennis was up for that. Yeah, that's no problem at all. So, of course, I'm driving, Father sat beside me, and Dennis is lying down in the back of the hearse. Well, of course, nobody can see him because the deck was that little bit lower than the windows. So, anyway, all was well until we got to Pennybryn, which is just as we're coming into Wadebridge there. So Father said, right, Dennis, we're coming back Wadebridge now. So he said, oh, proper, lovely, I'll get out here. And of course, he sat up, And he said he looked at the car following behind, and he said the look on their faces to see this chap sit up, gecking at him from the back of the hearse. Well, 'tis something that we'll never forget. And I say, dear old Dennis, we just pulled over and he did climb out, but I never knew who was following behind, but I don't quite know what they thought of it. So there we have it. I say I have rambled a bit tonight. I hope it hasn't been too boring. I do get carried away a bit sometimes. But I thought for me Cornish words this week, I thought perhaps I'll do please and thank you. So please in Cornish is marpleg, and thank you is miraz. So there we go. And I think for me Cornish dialect saying this week, I think what it'd be, it's if you're describing somebody that's really thin, and you'd look at them and you'd say, "Go, I've seen more fat on a butcher's pencil." So there we go. I've seen more fat on a butcher's pencil. Right, well, I'm going to leave you there now, and I hope you have a good weekend. We got another bank holiday coming up here now with the coronation of the king. So hope you have a good weekend, and I'll speak to you again next week. Wish you well, do Guinness, and Kerno Bisfican.